Hey everyone, what are the top 15 foods to reverse insulin resistance and lose weight easily? Why should you listen to me? I was featured on the first ever carnivore TV show Reverse TV series. I have a PhD in nutrition and exercise physiology from the University of Miami. I've taught for over a decade at the University of Miami at the American College of Sports Medicine, coached hundreds and thousands actually at this point of clients, and you can check out the testimonials on DrZALDIVAR.com. And most importantly, I've lost 30 pounds and managed to maintain that weight loss after struggling for decades with my weight. All right. So you want to reverse insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is the reason why most people cannot lose weight. Do you feel like no matter what you do, you either plateau or you revert back to your original weight? Insulin resistance is probably the reason for that. And so I have another video where I talk into the biochemistry as to how insulin literally blocks your fat loss. Now, if you look at this graph in front of you, this is from Virta Health, which I highly recommend you check out this foundation. It is founded by Dr. Stephen Phinney and Dr. Jeff Volek, two pioneering researchers on all things ketogenic and low carb dieting. And they've done so many and continue to do so many studies that is showing us how powerful it is for us to drop our carbohydrate intake to target the root cause of type 2 diabetes and weight gain and so many other conditions. So from their website, you can check out this graph. The x-axis is the time and the y-axis is the blood insulin. You can see that when you eat carbohydrates, you see the highest spike in your blood insulin level. Insulin is the hormone that the pancreas secretes in response to eating carbohydrates, because when you eat carbs, your blood sugar rises, and blood sugar, when it rises, it can really destroy the health of your blood vessels, your organs, everything can really be damaged to a very high extent with chronically elevated insulin levels, which is unfortunately the reality of most people that are eating what is being recommended from most traditional nutrition organizations and also people who are on the standard American diet. So when you're eating carbohydrates, you can see blood insulin shoots up the highest. Protein also has an insulin response. And this is important if we are trying to reverse insulin resistance. If somebody is super healthy, never had an issue with eating too many carbohydrates, never had an issue with being overweight, never had any health issues, they might be able to handle large amounts of protein and the insulin, the response that comes from that. But within the context of people who are struggling to lose weight, which I know a lot of you watching this video fall under this category, even protein is something that we need to pay attention to. And then you can see finally that fat has the least amount of insulin response. So I'm going to base the top 15 foods on this fact. So you want to minimize insulin spikes as much as possible because insulin is also known as the fat storage hormone. So if we want to reverse insulin resistance so we can finally shed the weight once and for all and not constantly plateau and not constantly feel like we have cravings and low energy all the time, then we really want to pay attention not only to our carbohydrate intake, but to a certain extent, even our protein intake. So we want to focus on fats first and foremost, because that's going to be the fastest way to reverse insulin resistance. And that means also if you can add in intermittent fasting, whereby your body shifts to running on your own body fat stores. It runs on fat, but instead of eating it, it's running on your own body fat stores. That's even more powerful than just eating a high fat diet. So what are those top 15 foods? Proteins, meats, and seafood. So the steak, ground beef, brisket, ground turkey, rotisserie chicken, My personal favorite would be air fried chicken drumsticks and air fried chicken wings. I pop them in an air fryer for 30 minutes at around 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And then I have a little bit of whipped butter on the side. I literally cannot get enough of that. It's very delicious. You don't want to shy away from the skin of the chicken and all of the fat that comes along with the meats because we want to prioritize fat in this instance. Wild caught salmon, it's a nutrient dense food that's high in omega 3s, even vitamin D. Lobster tails or shrimp that's grilled with some garlic or butter. All kinds of meats, basically, and all kinds of seafood, even things like oysters, if you enjoy those kinds of foods. Eggs, zero carb dairy products like cheeses. Ideally, if you can get your hands on raw cheese, that would be great. Also, butter and ghee. Now, you don't want to overdo it with things like milk and yogurt because, in the cases of insulin resistance, the lactose or the milk sugar that is found in higher amounts in yogurt and even higher amounts in milk could pose a problem and it could just really slow down the results that you're getting. So, maybe hold off on yogurt and milk for the first few weeks or even for the first few months. Now, depending if you're keto or carnivore, you may be able to include some veggies like lettuce, onions. So those are low carb vegetables. So lettuce, onions, peppers, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, asparagus, spinach, tomatoes, all of those kinds of foods. Um, you really want to steer clear from starchy vegetables like corn and potatoes. Now, if you have not come across the notion of plant toxins and plant anti-nutrients, definitely check out my other videos on this topic so you can understand why sometimes you might be having joint pain or might be having certain health conditions, eczema, psoriasis, and it could be from the vegetables that you're eating. So depending on your level of sensitivity to those plant toxins and also depending on your age, you may become more and more sensitive to them. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Now, avocados and bacon are great also because they're really high fat foods and they're especially high in potassium because when you're eating a very low carbohydrate diet, your insulin secretion is going to be so low, whereby in the initial phase, your body's going to struggle to regulate its electrolyte level. And so that might make you feel a little bit tired and fatigued in the initial phases of doing this protocol. But consuming things like avocados and bacon, which are really high in potassium, can help offset some of those symptoms. You can have things like olive oil if you are consuming plant foods instead of seed oil. So steer clear from inflammatory seed oils like canola oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, peanut oil, cottonseed oil, which are found in pretty much most packaged foods. If you're having nuts, I guess I would add nuts here if you are keto and you have no interest in doing a carnivore diet. So if you're just doing a ketogenic diet, which is a great diet to reverse insulin resistance, you can do nuts, but be careful. Most nuts that you buy are probably going to be cooked in seed oils like cottonseed or peanut oil, which are very inflammatory and can truly slow down this whole process. I prefer animal fats like butter, ghee, lard, which is pork fat, beef tallow. Now, occasionally, if you want to have something sweet and you're on ketogenic diet as opposed to a carnivore diet, you could use some keto-friendly low-carb flours like almond flour or even coconut flour. And the mix of that with butter can make a great base for low-carb dessert recipes. And then you can have some sugar-free chocolates or things like that. Definitely keep those to a minimum because if you're not prioritizing whole foods, including too many treats like that, while that might make the transition easier, it's probably going to stimulate cravings because the more you have something delicious, even if it's keto, even if it's low carb, it's still going to lead to that dopamine release in your brain, and that's going to create cravings in your brain for more of those foods. Browned butter bites. Check out YouTube recipes for brown butter bites. This is a very clean kind of carnivore dessert. It's literally just butter that you melt over a low heat for a period of time until it turns a little bit brown, as opposed right before it burns, it turns brown. And then you pour it into silicone molds and put it in the fridge. And now you have tiny little kind of candy that is like toffee candy, very mildly sweet, but it's definitely much better than the keto treats that you may want to whip up. Now, artificial sweeteners may be okay in the transitional period to help ease off your sugar addiction withdrawal symptoms. Not just sugar addiction, but like just going from a carb heavy diet to removing carbs, you're going to go through those withdrawal symptoms, and they can be very severe. I do have a video that goes over the symptoms of withdrawal, so definitely check it out. I'll make sure I link it at the end of this YouTube video so you can feel reassured as you're going through the initial adaptation period, so you don't feel like you're losing your mind. Also, you can have things like black coffee, teas, cream, which is pure fat. Just be careful how much cream you're consuming. I had a client that was having 5 or 6 cups of coffee a day with tons of cream in it, and she was gaining weight, and she was following a carnivore diet and including the coffee and the cream, and she just kept gaining weight. And that's because cream is extremely high in calories. So really be careful about that. You can do half and half a little bit as well, but not too much, because half and half has sugar in it, has lactose, whereas cream has minimal amounts of that. So half and half, you can have a little bit of that. Too much is going to slow down insulin resistance healing. And fat fasting is another way you can supercharge your not only fat loss, but also reversing insulin resistance. I explain how to do that in something that I originated called a brief fat fasting. I have 2 videos on that. I will make sure I link them at the end of this YouTube video so you can check out how to do that. Why is it better than other kinds of fasting in the low carb community, and how you can reverse insulin resistance very quickly and lose a lot of weight very quickly on that. You don't want to do it for too long, no more than 3 to 5 days though. But again, check out the videos as I explain more details there. And if you need more help, check me out on my website for coaching. It's drzaldivar.com/coaching. And for my guides, especially the dopamine guides, like the dopamine brain, monster mindset, and monster mind, those 3 guides, which you can get them all in one shot in the brain bundle, they go over my 3-pronged approach to raise baseline dopamine so that we can target the root cause of your sugar cravings, which oftentimes is really why people develop insulin resistance, because it is so hard to moderate the amount of sugar and sweet taste, even artificial sweeteners. And so that was the topic of my 6-year dissertation at the University of Miami. That's what really I poured all of my efforts into, understanding addiction and understanding how when you're eating lots of sugars and lots of carbs over a long period of time, you start destroying the dopamine centers in the brain. And so for this plan to reverse insulin resistance, or any other diet that you want to follow, for it to work, oftentimes I find that people just can't stick to them because their baseline dopamine levels have been destroyed. The dopamine centers in their brain have been destroyed over time. It's not just about regular dopamine, it's about the receptor that the dopamine binds to. So the brain bundle guide goes over my 3-pronged approach. Each one of the guides targets a different way in which you can raise baseline dopamine. I highly recommend combining all 3 together. And thank you so much for watching. Watch this. I'll put all of the videos that I mentioned, but watch all of those videos next to understand how powerfully insulin resistance can block fat loss. So I do have a separate YouTube video that goes over how much insulin resistance can be this hormonal block that keeps people stuck at a certain weight. Or maybe you might be able to lose a little bit of weight for a short period of time and then you rebound. And it's because we're not dealing with the root cause, which is insulin resistance. I hope this was helpful. If you enjoyed this kind of content, let me know so I make sure that I film additional content similar to this.